On the news hour tonight, House of Representatives flags discrepancies in gazetted tax laws. Labor protests insecurity and economic hardships in Nigeria. NMDPRA CEO Farouk Ahmed clash with Dangote. Away from Nigeria, South Africa to expel Kenyans over United States refugee claims. Hello and welcome to News Hour on Trust TV. I am Muhammad Kudu Abubakar. Member of the House of Representatives Abdul Samad Dasuki from Sokoto on Wednesday raised a matter of privilege on the floor of the House, alleging discrepancies between tax laws passed by the National Assembly and the versions subsequently gazetted and released to the public. Rising under Order 6, Rule 2 of the House Rules on a point of privilege, Honorable Dasuki said his legislative privilege had been breached, insisting that the content of the gazetted tax laws did not reflect what lawmakers debated, voted on, and passed on the floor of the House of Representatives. According to Dasuki, following the passage of the tax bills, he spent the last 3 days carefully reviewing the gazetted copies alongside the votes and proceedings of the House of Representatives, as well as the harmonized versions adopted by both chambers of the National Assembly, during which he observed what he described as a clear discrepancy. The lawmaker stressed that the issue was not about moving a motion, but about drawing the attention of the House to what he termed a serious breach of the legislative process and the Constitution. He urged the Speaker to ensure that all relevant documents, including harmonized versions, the votes and proceedings of both chambers, and the gazetted copies currently in circulation are presented before the Committee of the Whole for thorough scrutiny by all members. Presiding over the plenary, Speaker Abbas Tajuddin said he had taken note of the point of privilege and assured lawmakers that appropriate action will be taken to address the matter.
I will call on Mr. Speaker to graciously look at what was harmonized, what is in the gazetted copy, what was passed in the House and the Senate. You will find out what is before Nigerians, which is being sold to Nigerians at the Ministry of Information, which I personally went to buy the gazetted copies, are not what was passed. So there is no motion here, but Mr. Speaker, I'll be pleading that all the documents should be brought before the Committee of the Whole.
Still in the House of Representatives, in March this year, the House of Representatives moved to tighten safeguards on bills before presidential assent, citing fears that laws transmitted to the executive might not fully reflect what lawmakers approved. The motion raised by Honorable Sadasoli warned of discrepancies between bills passed by both chambers and versions forwarded for assent. He pointed to cases where the president had declined assent to legislation due to drafting and authentication errors, exposing weaknesses in the final verification process. At the time, lawmakers noted that while the Authentication Act requires bills to pass through the clerk of the National Assembly, there was no mandatory provision compelling the clerks of both the Senate and the House of Representatives to jointly verify the final text before transmission to the President. The House said this gap left room for inconsistencies capable of undermining legislative credibility. To address the concern, the House directed that all authenticated bills be returned to the clerks of both chambers for confirmation before being sent to the President, a process lawmakers insisted must apply to all legislation, including constitutional amendment bills. That intervention was meant to protect transparency, preserve institutional trust, and prevent disputes after assent. Now, with fresh claims emerging over alleged discrepancies between tax bills debated and passed by the National Assembly and the versions later gazetted, the concerns raised in March 2025 appear to have caught up with the system, turning a procedural warning into a live political controversy. Moving on, Nigeria's opposition has warned that it will mobilize citizens against President Tinubu's administration proposed tax regime set to take effect in January. At a news conference in Abuja, the group described the policy as punitive, arguing that it amounts to taxing poverty and hunger. They urged the APC-led government to halt implementation. Trust TV's Shafiu Suleiman has the report.
Opposition figures from across party lines are closing ranks to challenge the new tax regime, which they say is anti-people and capable of triggering widespread unrest.
This government continues to ask Nigerians to give more and more, while it allows those in public office to take more and more. Tinubu has brought Nigerians to their knees, but he will not relent until he brings Nigerians to the grave. We shall not allow suffering Nigerians to be brought to their grave. We as Nigerian opposition movement have decided to stand up in support of those opposition politicians who issued the letter a few days ago, and the NLC and TUC to say enough is enough.
The group questioned the rationale for introducing new taxes, citing what they describe as the government's failure to account for proceeds from fuel subsidy removal. They also demanded public disclosure of details surrounding the recent and controversial Memorandum of Understanding between Nigeria and France.
When we talk about the resistance, every resistance that is within the ambit of the law will be explored. Every resistance that is constitutional. And it must be noted that in spite of the fact that Nigerians have come out repeatedly to talk about how difficult this is going to be and how they do not agree with this particular law, it has been passed, and if there's that hell-bent attitude to take it on without looking at the suffering of the people.
It is common knowledge that we have met new resources from May 29 to date, but we have also borrowed so much money, again, within this same period, and yet Nigerians cannot sleep with their eyes closed. There are no schools, our roads are not usable, there are even no hospitals.
The Tinubu administration, however, insists the tax reforms have undergone public and legislative scrutiny and are aimed at boosting revenue to support long-term national development. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Still on the developments in the House of Representatives, joining us via Zoom is Honorable Rima Shaulu, former member of the House of Representatives who represented Taraba State. He is also a distinguished journalist. He is joining us to discuss this tax matter. Thank you for joining us, Rima.
Thank you very much, my good friend.
Honorable Rima Shaulu, as a distinguished former member of the House of Representatives and, of course, a journalist of repute, how concerned are you with these latest developments with respect to discrepancies to bills passed or gazetted or not passed, and different versions, if you like?
Well, as you said in your report, this is actually not the first time we've had such, and it might interest you to note that at a point, even the law establishing the Niger Delta Development Commission had two versions that I was aware of. And it does appear regularly that some people within administrations of government, not just this government, routinely between the office of the president and the National Assembly, or howsoever they do it, certain words are routinely changed, and that's what, according to your report, Honorable Sada Soli brought up in March this year. And in this case, you also recall that in 1979, one of the controversies over the election was the use of the words "and" "or" in the Constitution. So you can see that the use of words are very, very important in lawmaking, because they can fundamentally alter meanings of words. But what Honorable Abdul Samad did say were very fundamental, the allegations he made, and that those allegations deserve some investigations. For instance, he spoke about insertion of passages that were not contained in the certified bill. He spoke about clauses that were removed from the gazetted copies. He also spoke about texts that were modified substantially, such that the meanings or intent of the original provisions may have changed. And these are not just editorial or clerical fixes. And in any case, I was a member of the committee of the Constitutional Review Committee at one point in the National Assembly at one of the joint conferences. I think there was a very big debate as to whether the clerks of the National Assembly had the power or not to make any changes in, even if it were grammatical errors, and then just submit the changes that they have made to for onward transmission to the president. And the preponderant opinion, I think, if I remember very well, was that even if it was a typographical error, such typographical errors need to be taken back to the two chambers for correction, because it is the chamber, is the resolution of the chambers that in the intent of the constitution or in the process of lawmaking as all over the world, it is what is passed at the chambers on the floor of the two houses in the case of Nigeria that ought to become law, and not any form of correction, however little, that any person from the clerks of the National Assembly to the executive could make. The law, the constitution, and the history made such changes to be made by either clerks of the National Assembly or the executive, without those changes, however small, however minute that they are, being taken back to the legislature for appropriate corrections.
So, as a former member and someone who I can say has cognate experience in this kind of lawmaking process, moving forward, what would you suggest the House and the Senate should do with these discoveries?
Now, there are certain things that we must make very clear when we talk about Nigeria. Namely, that is the fact that the lawmaking process, as we have it, as it's intended, as it evolved through history, it does not contemplate a situation where anybody in the executive or in the administration of the National Assembly will insert even a letter, a word, or anything to the process. If such become necessary, they need to be brought back for appropriate legislative actions. And any law, however minute the changes have been made, that were made outside what the chambers, the two chambers of National Assembly may have done, to the extent that those changes were imputed, such a law should, in the contemplation of the Constitution, be declared null and void, because the law, the Constitution, does not contemplate that any person outside the legislature will sit down to do any corrections. When those corrections are done, they are supposed to be brought back. And in any case, if you look at what President Muhammadu Buhari did when he was president, even grammatical errors that were brought to his attention made him to send back those bills to the National Assembly for corrections. That is how the process should be, that even grammatical errors or such corrections should be brought back. And I think what the National Assembly ought to do is to check the certified true copies of the laws that were passed passed by the two chambers, and to the extent of those, and wherever those changes were made, however minute they are, those bills or those laws are supposed to be brought back for legislative actions to either be accepted or be rejected and be taken back for presidential assent.
Before tax laws should come back to the National Assembly? In other words, are you advocating for the 4 tax laws
as long as you can establish that they were
the National Assembly should be brought back for further scrutiny?
Those are not laws. To the extent that those changes were made, they are not laws. They are frauds. They are not laws. So it is the version that was passed by the House and assented to the president that stands. If the president did not assent to the ones that were sent by the National Assembly, to the extent of those inconsistencies or those, to the extent that those insertions or removals were made, those laws in the eyes of the Constitution are null and void. They are not laws.
Honorable Rima Shaulu, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you very much, my in-law.
Nigerian workers have expressed deep concern over the kidnapping and killings of their members, as well as other Nigerians, particularly in rural communities where criminal elements are said to operate freely. The workers raised these concerns during a peaceful protest organized by the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, in Kaduna, calling on government to urgently address the growing security challenges facing the nation. TOS TV's Bello Musa now reports.
Defying the cold weather, groups of workers gathered at the Kaduna State Secretariat of the Nigeria Labour Congress discussing the devastating impact of insecurity on their members.
Our workers united, greatest Kaduna State workers.
They noted that workers stationed in rural communities are the most affected, with many living and working under constant fear.
One, the insecurity is nothing, it's kidnapping. Whenever a health worker was kidnapped, he will have to sell his houses, everything to make sure, and he paid the ransom to bring back his loved one or to pay the ransom for himself. So this insecurity, we are not happy. We are calling on federal government as a matter of urgency to see the end of this insecurity in all across Nigeria.
We are the workers that works close to the that works within the rural communities, and we are the ones that are well hit by this insecurity because we live in the villages. We discover that some of our workers are engaged in farming and other things, and in recent times it's very difficult for one to go to farm. Not only going to farm, going to our offices sometimes it becomes a very serious challenge to us, and that is the reason why we came out today to come and tell the government that we, the citizens, demands more in terms of security, securing the lives and property of the citizens.
It is truly a setback. It interests you to know that some schools were able to conduct exams in a rush, and some schools completely were not able to end up the term as expected because of the insecurity. The government were not having any option rather than to give directives for the closure of the school. So actually it is a setback. It has affected the academic calendar of the schools.
After expressing their grievances at the NLC State Secretariat, the protesters proceeded on a peaceful street march, chanting solidarity songs to register their displeasure over the nation's security situation. The protest was later terminated at the Kaduna State House of Assembly, where the workers submitted a letter outlining their demands to the Speaker of the House.
We are here with a special message, Your Excellency. The Nigerian masses are crying. Our, particularly child girls, are now not going to school. Good number of schools are closed because of security threat. Good number of our farmers in good part of the country cannot access their farms. People cannot travel now. If you are to travel, your family members will be in disarray until you arrive. I know you know it.
Our members came just because to come and submit the letter in a peaceful way, see how the people are moving.
The Nigerian Labour Congress says it will continue to engage government at all levels until concrete steps are taken to address insecurity and protect the lives and livelihoods of Nigerian workers. Bello Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
Similar protests on the worsening insecurity and deepening economic hardship was also held by civil society groups and activists of the Nigeria Labour Congress in Lagos. The protesters called on governments at all levels to urgently fulfill their constitutional responsibility to protect lives and improve the welfare of citizens. The report.
Led by renowned human rights lawyer Femi Falana, the protesters marched to the Lagos State House of Assembly expressing growing public anger over persisting kidnapping, banditry, and terrorism. Addressing the crowd, Falana said Nigerians across the country are increasingly frustrated by the deteriorating security situation. He stressed that the 1999 Constitution clearly provides that the welfare and security of the people remain the primary purpose of government. Falana rejected calls for foreign military intervention, recalling Nigeria's long-standing opposition to foreign military bases and defense pacts. He maintained that the country possesses sufficient human and natural resources to protect lives and property if properly managed.
Resolve to pressure the government to take care of our security and welfare, because it is stated in the bourgeois constitution of Nigeria that the welfare and security of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. Yes. So this is not a matter that requires foreign invasion of our country. We kicked against, in 1962, Nigerian youths fought against the Anglo-Nigerian Defense Pact. Since then, we have resisted any attempt by France and the United States of America to have military bases in Nigeria. This time around, we are telling the whole world that the government of Nigeria be pressurized to take care of our people.
The human rights lawyer also raised concern over alleged financial misconduct, calling for a thorough investigation into an audit report submitted to the Senate, which allegedly accused the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) of criminally diverting about 210 trillion naira. He insisted that the report must not be ignored, demanding the recovery of any stolen funds and their remittance into the Federation account to address Nigerian pressing challenges.
We therefore demand
death sentence,
the immediate recovery of the money, so that that money is paid into the Federation account to take care of the immediate problems confronting our people.
Also speaking, the Lagos State NLC chairperson Fumi Seshi highlighted the severe hardship faced by Nigerian workers, many of whom were unable to travel during the Christmas and end-of-year holidays despite working throughout the year. She said widespread insecurity, including banditry, kidnapping and violent attacks on highways and within communities, has made travel unsafe in many parts of the country.
With all this issue of insecurity, banditry, criminality, kidnapping, and ransom paying, we don't want to go into 2026 with this. Anybody do anyhow, they will see anyhow.
The protesters urged both federal and state governments to take decisive action to improve security, enhance welfare, and ensure accountability in the management of public resources, warning that Nigerians can no longer endure rising insecurity and economic hardship without meaningful response.
Still on the protest, leaders of the organized labor, led by the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Joe Ajero, have met with the federal government intervention team headed by the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum and executive governor of Imo State, Hope Uzodimma. The two parties, who met behind closed doors on Tuesday, reconvened in the early hours of Wednesday to broker a truce over gray areas of disagreement, particularly on security, workers' welfare, and the economy. Following the meeting, labor leaders announced the suspension of the nationwide protest and commended President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for the steps taken so far to address the core demands of Nigerian workers. Other members of the federal government delegation included the governors of Kebbi State, Nasir Idris, Edo State, Monday Okwebelo, Kogi State, Ahmed Usman Ododo, and the Minister of State for Labor and Employment, Nkiru Onyejocha.
Like you are aware, as I have been told, the various reforms going on. Unity is very critical. And our national interest is also very important. And that the march towards economic prosperity for regular engagements from the president's programs to secure Nigeria.
He's not going to talk on our side. The action started this morning and we are rounding up. We'll take back whatever we discussed with them. And the attitude of meeting at the day or the eve of any action is not rocket science that action will put up. Put it first that point that day. Because it takes a lot to mobilize that campaign. But even what we got is like promising news. And we want to have confidence in the governors that it will deliver. However, Mr. President was emphatic that the issue of insecurity will be his thing of the past very soon. And that he's taking extra steps to take care of it. All areas we face. And we equally talked about financial insecurity. Because a worker that is not well fed and not well paid will have even more problems than the one that is now.
In another development, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has requested the Senate to confirm new chief executives for the Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority and the Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, following the resignation of the heads of both agencies. The President Tinubu's request is conveyed in separate executive communications to the Senate on Wednesday. Farouk Ahmed resigned as Chief Executive Officer of the NMDPRA, while Benga Komolafe stepped down as Chief Executive Officer of the NUPRC. Both officials were appointed in 2021 by former President Muhammadu Buhari, following the enactment of the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA. The development was announced in a statement issued by the President's Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga. Joining us on Zoom is Jide Ojo, policy analyst, to talk on the NMDPRA CEO's resignation and the replacement forwarded to the Senate for screening. Jide Ojo, welcome to TOS TV News Hour.
My pleasure, Kudu Abaka. Good to see you again.
Yeah, what can you tell us are the consequential effects of first the resignation and then the new names sent to the Senate?
Well, I think it's good that the president has acted very swiftly, because it doesn't give his government good optics to have someone holding such a sensitive position as midstream regulatory agencies, who has been accused of corruption, to stay on the job. But I'm only worried with the soft landing all of them have been getting, from Betta Edu last year to Uche, the immediate past Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, who was alleged to have committed certificate forgery, down to Farouk Ahmed. When you say, I want your resignation letter, and then somebody resign, and that's the end of the story. There are very heinous and grave allegations that have been leveled against Ahmed Farouk by Aliko Dangote, president of Dangote Group, that he was living above his means, his alleged corruption, and he has even petitioned the ICPC. I just do hope that ICPC will do his job, and that this will not end the way the Betta Edu's controversy has ended, because that was how we learned EFCC was investigating better do. But up to today, no one has cited or heard about what the EFCC investigation eventually revealed. Whether she was actually corrupt or she is not corrupt, the entire public has been left to speculate about what actually happened with better. So I think we should discourage this whole issue of soft landing, of just resign and then you go with whatever you are alleged to have stolen and all of that. That's not scapegoatism. That does not change anything in the mindset of the people. It seems like a slap on the wrist, in my own estimation.
Don't you think you are indicting yourself, you members of the civil society? Because these are issues that you should bring on the front burner and to remind government, remind various investigative agencies of these developments and the fact that nobody seems to hear anything about the outcomes or the findings. Don't you think you are indicting the civil society?
Yeah, also like part of us. The media has even a constitutional responsibility to hold government to account. That's what Section 22 has asked you to do. You are a veteran, you have been in the system for long. And I'm just raising the issue. I'm bringing to mind that under this same administration of President Bola Tinubu, we have had the controversy around the issue of Better Edu, former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. We have had that of Uche Naji. Just recently, over certificate forgery, we have now had that of Ahmed Farouk. And we are saying it's just not enough to say the case has been referred to ICPC or to EFCC. It's always good to have proper feedback. Are these people found guilty? If they are found guilty, can they be prosecuted? Can there be retrieval of whatever they have stolen? Look at even Emefiele's case. It's neither here nor there. With all the trial that have been going on for over 1 year now, nobody is sure. We have heard that Emefiele forfeited uncompleted mass housing here in Abuja. But at some point, we have also read the Emefiele kicking against the taking over of that property. So it's always good to have diligent prosecution, diligent investigation first and prosecution. And as members of civil society, we are limited by what we can do. This is just an advocacy that one is doing pro bono. Nobody is paying me for what I've been doing over the decades. And you know that I also have a leg in the media space, having been writing for the past 35 years. But you see, we are all working towards one goal, which is to have a better Nigerian society, to have a livable society, to have a society that we will be proud to hand over to our children. Because when issue of heinous corruption gets swept under the proverbial carpet, it will incite more other people, it will incentivize more people to go into it. But if you have made scapegoats, serious scapegoats of those who are caught with their hands in the cookie jar, then it will serve as a deterrent to others. That's why a country like China is progressing. They run communism, and if you are caught, if allegation of corruption is found and could be proven against you, you get shot. You get more than you get killed for stealing public wealth. Yes, but in Nigeria and many African countries, these things are just,
thank you so much for your insights.
You know, there's a show of it, media trial, and then it went quiet, and then it becomes one of the long lists of unresolved corruption allegations.
Thank you so much for your insights. As a policy analyst, I just try to rejig you a little to remind you that it's a collective work between the media and the civil society. Maybe the two should work together and bring about, if you like, conclusive outcomes with all these investigations you have talked about and all the, if you like, corrupt cases that you have mentioned. Thank you so much for coming on News Hour.
It's my pleasure, Kudu Abubakar. Keep safe and stay blessed. Cheers.
Thank you. The Nigerian Senate has rejected a motion sponsored by the senator representing the Federal Capital Territory, Senator Ireti Kingibe, seeking to address pressing governance challenges in Abuja. Here's the report.
Invoking Senate Orders 41 and 51, Senator Kingibe drew attention to what she described as worsened conditions in the FCT, including poor waste management, ongoing demolitions by the FCT administration, unpaid salaries, delayed payments to contractors, land allocation disputes, and the depletion of land belonging to the University of Abuja.
Troubled that sewage systems across the FCT have been blocked and overflowing for nearly 8 months, with accumulated waste and untreated emissions now reaching catastrophic levels, constituting a clear and present danger of epidemics, environmental contamination, and large-scale public health disaster. Aware that the continued failure to clear sewage and waste exposes residents to cholera, typhoid, dysentery, and other waterborne and sanitation-related diseases.
However, Senate President Godswill Akpabio ruled the motion inadmissible as a matter of urgent national importance, noting that it combined too many issues and differed from earlier understandings reached with the senator. He advised Senator Kingibe to withdraw the motion and instead file a substantive motion focusing solely on waste management.
Motions that tend to they don't focus on the subject matter. Please, I think you may need to have private discussions with some senators, because if you are having a matter of urgent national importance on waste management or waste disposal, you stick to it. You focus on it. That is our rule. But when you are asking us to go into payment of salaries, payment of wages, allowances.
The Senate's Chief Whip, Senator Tahir Monguno, alongside Senator Sunday Karimi, representing Kogi West, supported the ruling. Senator Karimi accused the motion of being brought under false pretenses, while other lawmakers stressed that it failed to meet established procedural rules.
You cannot put something on nothing and expect it to stand. It is bad, and it is incurably bad. Therefore, Mr. President, I urge my sister, Senator Ireti Kingibe, to withdraw that motion because it is in flagrant violations of our rules. And there is nothing to discuss before the Senate based on our rules.
Matters like this, as raised by distinguished Senator Ireti Kingibe, are matters that should come under substantive motion on our order paper. There should be motions on notice. And to the extent that she had discussed with the Senate President, and the Senate President
she discussed with the Senate President about waste management.
Not
about
waste
lack
management.
Of, yes, not land allocation.
Okay.
Not payment of salaries.
So definitely, in that words, I want to say that the manner of presentation of the motion itself will go to show that it's in violation of our rule. It's not consistent.
It's time for her to withdraw this motion.
It's important for us to get to the root of it.
This motion has to be withdrawn.
Please, sorry.
Let her come back with it. No, this motion has to be.
This motion is dead on arrival because it's not in conformity with this order. You ought to have known the entire content of the motion.
In response, Senator Kingibe agreed to comply with the senator's directive. Despite the differing views, the Senate agreed that urgent action is required to address waste management challenges in the Federal Capital Territory to avert a potential public health crisis.
You're watching News Hour on Trust TV. Coming up after the break, NDLEA detains a vessel with 21 crew members over cocaine shipment. We'll have more news when we return. Welcome back to the News Hour on Trust TV. Let's take a look at our top stories again. House of Representatives flags discrepancies in gazetted tax laws. And Labour protests insecurity, economic hardships in Nigeria. Moving on now, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, has secured an order of the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos to detain a merchant vessel, its captain and 20 other crew members following the seizure of 25.5 kilograms of cocaine at the Apapa port. The vessel MV San Antonio arrived at this port from Brazil on December 6, 2025. NDLEA operatives acting on intelligence discovered the illicit drug concealed in the hatch of the commodity vessel. After the cargo was fully discharged, a total of 21 crew members of different nationalities were taken into custody alongside the recovered cocaine as investigations continued. The latest interception comes weeks after a similar operation at the same seaport. On November 16th, NDLEA officers intercepted another vessel, MV Nord Bosporus, which arrived from the port of Santos in Brazil with about 20 kilograms of cocaine concealed under its cargo. Reacting to the development, the chairman and chief executive officer of the NDLEA, retired Brigadier General Mohammed Buba Marwa, said the seizure reaffirmed the agency's firm stance against international drug trafficking networks. Power theft continues to strain Nigeria's electricity sector, cutting revenue, weakening service delivery, and shifting costs to paying customers. Despite repeated government campaigns and penalties, illegal electricity use remains widespread. Trust TV's Noel Sampson examines the situation and now reports.
Energy theft in Nigeria means consuming electricity without payment through illegal connections, meter bypasses, tampering or unauthorized use of residential lines. It's a major drain on the power sector. The distribution companies estimate that up to 40% of donated electricity never reaches paying customers, with illegal consumption and unmetered use driving much of that loss. Over 100 billion naira is lost annually to theft and unpaid bills. And some industry sources put total commercial losses, including theft, well above that figure each year. The drivers are clear: economic pressure, weak enforcement, corruption, poor public awareness, distrust of estimated billing, and a large metering gap. In 2025, the Federal Ministry of Power proposed an 8 billion naira public advocacy campaign alongside existing laws that prescribe fines and jail terms. However, enforcement remains uneven and direct illegal connections remain common. A Trust TV street survey shows low public awareness of both the advocacy campaign and penalties attached to electricity theft, raising questions about the reach and impact of government messaging.
As a Nigerian and as a user of electricity also, I will rather say there is a conspiracy somewhere between the staff of the NEPA, that's electricity, and the users, that's their customers. Because why they will not be afraid? Those people in charge of maybe having you as contradicting the law will now say, okay, what do we do? When you offer anything, it is gone.
It's just a lack of self-discipline from the citizens of Nigeria. A lot of us doesn't care what other people benefit. All they care is what I will benefit. And if we will care about the general benefit of Nigerians, I think that will be under control.
Most importantly, most people are not aware of it. There is a fine for that. And some people see like that meter is more than like what they use. They are being charged more than what they use. So that's why they actually are into it.
Public sector analysts warn that persistent theft weakens investor confidence and stalls reforms aimed at improving supply. They said investors are wary of putting funds into a system where revenue recovery remains uncertain.
So in terms of how to stop it, one, I have no issue with laws, but the people themselves must change their mindset. Part of the problem is that people are sociologically oriented to hold the view that by stealing electricity, that is my own piece of the national cake. So there must be this new orientation that unless you pay for electricity that you are consuming, you are not going to get the quality. In any case, the thief does not really bother about that one. The second one is metering must be attacked violently. Those who are even taking the electricity legitimately but are not paying, we also need to deal with that, because the theft of the energy is only a percentage of what is causing the denial of liquidity. Not paying for electricity is also very huge. As at the time I left the power sector, I know of a government agency that was owing as much as 3 billion. As at about 3 or 4 years ago, 3 billion naira. Now look at what that amount will be in terms of value as at that time and now.
Experts urge that reducing energy theft requires a mix of stronger enforcement and wider metering covering, transparent billing, and sustained public engagement. Without these steps, the cost of illegal consumption will continue to fall on law-abiding Nigerians. Well, Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde says Nigeria's challenges persist because the country's elite have failed to agree on a common response. Governor Seyi Makinde spoke in Abuja on the sidelines of the unveiling of a book, Headlines and Soundbites, Media Moments that Defined an Administration, written by former Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed. TOS TV's Shafiu Suleiman has the report.
Makinde blamed threats to national unity and cohesion on divisive rhetoric among political and social elites. He said Nigeria's challenges require a shared position and collective action from those in leadership.
Identify the problems that we are faced with today and design something that will allow us tackle that problem. And my own magic bullet is, Prof mentioned it, design an arrangement where there will be no winner take all politically in Nigeria, and I think it will be better for us.
A university professor stressed the need to uphold the collective principles on which Nigeria was founded, saying this remains key to national stability and mutual respect.
President Trump's derogation of Nigeria is a wake-up call. Let's rise to the occasion, prove our worth, and not just be reactionary. Secondly, having practiced the present constitution for some years now, and having identified some defects in the constitution, constitutional amendment is long overdue.
Other speakers at the event reflected on major media and policy moments that shaped the Buhari administration, especially during periods of local and global pressure.
There are two things that Alhaji Lai Mohammed has done that people have not really documented. The first one is that it was during the tenure of Alhaji Lai Mohammed that the International Press Institute came to Nigeria for the first time ever. He brought all the leaders, all the editors of the world to Nigeria together with the membership of the International Press Institute. He brought them to Nigeria for the first time. I think people should know that.
In my opinion, one of the greatest legacies and miracles of the Buhari administration was the handling of the COVID pandemic. Millions around the technologically advanced world perished during this campaign, and everyone expected Nigerians to be falling down on the streets like flies, and that didn't happen.
How Nigeria achieved the largest repatriation of stolen artifacts in the world. What we did to counter the opposition's false narrative on the recovery of territories from Boko Haram shortly after we assumed office. How we engaged the Bring Back Our Girls movement, whose members traveled with us to Yola and flew such sorties over Sambisa. How our very promising national orientation campaign, Change Begins With Me, was stifled.
The gathering also coincided with the posthumous birthday of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Speakers said his values of integrity, humility and patriotism remain relevant. Shafiu Suleiman, Trust TV News, Abuja.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has requested the House of Representatives to approve the repeal and reenactment of the 43.56 trillion naira federal budget for the 2025 fiscal year. The request was formally transmitted to the National Assembly and read on the floor of the House of Representatives by the Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Kalu. The report.
In a letter titled Transmission of the Appropriation, Repeal and Reenactment Bill Number 2, 2024 to 2025, President Tinubu urged lawmakers to consider and approve the revised budget in line with constitutional provisions. The bill seeks authorization to withdraw a total of 43.56 trillion naira from the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation for the 2025 fiscal year. Following its presentation, the House passed the bill for the first and second readings.
This bill is to bring an end to the practice of running multiple budgets concurrently, while at the same time ensuring reasonable, indeed unprecedentedly high capital performance rates on the 2024 and 2025 capital budget. It further provides, through a transparent and constitutionally grounded appropriation mechanism, for the orderly consolidation and appropriation of critical, time-sensitive expenditures necessarily undertaken in response to emergency exigencies, advancing the collective well-being of Nigerians and safeguarding national security.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has stepped down consideration of the 2026-2028 medium-term expenditure framework amid concerns over revenue projections and potential funding shortfalls. The House had earlier resolved into the Committee of Supply to consider a joint report by the Committees on Finance and National Planning and Economic Development, chaired by Honorable James Faleke.
Of 4.68, 5.96 and 7.9% for years 2026, 2027, 2028 respectively, amidst reform in the Nigerian economic and prospect for reforms to take effect in 2026, it's recommended that the projection for the real GDP be sustained. The real GDP growth rate projected at 4.6, 5.96 and 7.9 for years 2027, 2028 respectively, be sustained in anticipation of the gains of the tax reforms.
Concerns raised by the Speaker of the House, Abbas Tajuddin, over possible revenue gaps prompted lawmakers to defer further consideration of the framework, allowing the relevant committees time to address the issues identified.
If you have cause to reduce the benchmark proposed price to 60, it would mean there would be a deficit of $5 for each barrel. This will also have an impact on the total revenue that we are expecting from the oil and gas sector. And that will affect this 54.something trillion that has been earlier proposed.
Responding, Speaker Abbas Tajuddin assured lawmakers that the matter would be thoroughly investigated and resolved in the national interest. He reaffirmed the House's commitment to continued engagement to ensure fiscal transparency and legislative integrity as deliberations on key national economic policies continue.
On the foreign scene, South African authorities have arrested and will expel 7 Kenyan nationals found working without proper documentation on a United States government program to accept white Afrikaners as refugees. The Department of Home Affairs announced Wednesday that individuals employed by a Christian NGO based in Kenya were discovered during a raid on an application processing center in Johannesburg on Tuesday. The department said the Kenyans were in South Africa on tourist visas, making their work a clear violation of their conditions of entry into the country. The program launched under former U.S. President Donald Trump. The program launched under U.S. President Donald Trump in May offered refugee status to the minority white Afrikaner community, citing claims of discrimination and even genocide, which the South African government strongly disputes. Despite Trump's halting most refugee arrivals after taking office in January, an exception was made for Afrikaners. A first group of about 50 Afrikaners, descendants of South Africa's first European settlers, were flown to the United States on a chartered plane in May, with others following in smaller numbers on commercial flights. Now, sports update. Let's join Kabiru Lawan.
The Nigerian Football Federation (NFF) has petitioned FIFA over DR Congo's use of ineligible players in the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. DR Congo knocked Nigeria out in a 4-3 penalty shootout in Morocco, but it now emerges that 6 to 9 Congolese players may have violated ineligibility rules, failing to renounce previous nationalities, a requirement under their own constitution. NFF insists FIFA was misled, and the documents have been submitted for review. If the case goes Nigerians' way, the Super Eagles could still secure a spot at the 2026 World Cup in the USA, Canada, and Mexico. Still on sport news, Nigeria has claimed a prestigious gold medal in table tennis at the 4th African Youth Game after defeating continental powerhouse Egypt to emerge champions in the mixed team event. The Team Nigerian mixed team, represented by Matthew Fabumi and Ojo Favor, delivered a composed and dominant performance in the final, overcoming Egypt by a convincing 2-0 scoreline to secure the gold medal and confirming Nigerians' growing strength in the youth table tennis. Nigerians' journey to the top of the podium was marked by a series of impressive victories. The team first defeated Tunisia in the quarters to book a place in the semi-final before producing a spirited display to overcome Algeria in a tense and hard-fought semi-final encounter. The gold medal ceremony added further significance to the achievement as the Nigerian team was presented with their medal by Engineer Abu Gomel, President of Nigerian Olympic Committee and NOC. The triumph against one of the African's traditional table tennis giants highlights the promise of Nigeria's young athletes and reinforces the country's commitment to excellence at the continental stage. That's Sport News. I am Kabir Lawal.
A big congratulations to the Nigerian table tennis team there. With that, we end tonight's News Hour on Trust TV. Do not forget to follow us across all our media platforms and join our YouTube live stream for more news. Thank you for watching. I'm Muhammad Kuda Abubakar. Good night.